so free. I'm not letting go. Forever holding. I'm riding my soul. I'm riding my soul. I'm free. I'm riding my soul. I'm riding my soul. I'm free. Riding my soul. My soul, yes, baby. Climbing on the floor, forever holding. I am imagine the sweet morning. You're riding the breeze in the sky, floating. I'm riding my soul, and I'm so free. I'm not letting go.
The Gauteng province has created a relief for the benefit of individuals within the sports and arts sector. This is out of the realization that sports and arts continue to be one of the sectors that is hardest hit by the COVID pandemic. And in this regard, as a caring government, we have found means of how we can create some form of relief for individuals within the sectors, but also possible job opportunities. And in this regard, one of the things that we have done with all the national events or national day events that we do have, we've made them virtual. and are still able to employ and work with various artists and sports individuals. And this has been done from our Human Rights Day, our Freedom Day, and now with Youth Month. We continue to integrate artists and sports individuals within, so that whilst COVID does not allow for major events to take place, by going virtual, it enables us to still be able to utilize these skills and showcase the talent that the province has. With regard to the Gauteng Fund that is created for individuals within the sports and arts sectors, this is a relief fund of 28 million, which we seek to find individuals who work within our communities. These may be individuals who teach art classes within communities, who coach soccer teams within communities, netball teams, and so forth across the various sporting codes. These are the individuals who play a critical role in the development of our communities. These are people who ensure that our communities keep fit and, more importantly, are engaged within positive recreational activities. Our fund is geared at all these people, and all we ask is that you come and apply, visit our website, visit our social media pages at Gauteng SACR, that's at Gauteng SACR, and you'll be able to get more information. We really want to make sure that we assist these individuals because we appreciate the work that they do in our communities, because it is in line with what government seeks to do, and we want to make sure that people continue being engaged within positive activities such as recreation, within arts, within our sports, and so forth. So please do apply. This fund is for you.
The unspeakable, we must speak. The unbearable, we must weep.
Wat hjälper dig att taal niemand kan die taal praten. En zonder taal het je ons in elk geval identiteit of je kan je niet met zekere natie of iets identificeren.
I do think that with gender-based violence, some murders are highlighted and then others are swept under the rug. And I'm not for that, because I think it's contributing to the same system that created those same violences we're experiencing, all of us. So for people to still want to be like, we're fighting for women's rights, we're fighting for liberation, but they're only fighting for certain sectors of liberation and not the liberation of all people, then that's going to be the same fight all over and over and over. It's not going to happen until it's inclusive. It's never going to happen. Because by reducing another person's violent experience while focusing on your own is creating more divisions, and we already have that. That's what's brought us here. Our voices are not. Even the fact that when the marches were happening in Sandton right now, it was only black women, but all women get killed. Reva was a white woman, she got killed. So it's just like, there's so many divisions, but people are not talking about it. They just want to sweep them under the rug and then continue as light of day. And as long as that happens, we will have the same problems, period.
We have come so far. Our brothers, older sisters, have died in the name of freedom. This story is for you.
Beloved country, What ingredients did we miss in baking our rainbow nation? We blossom, and when do we birth a new narrative of freedom?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ratile Mohoje, and this is today's session of the Youth Master Classes brought to you by the Gauteng Film Commission, the National Film and Video Foundation, the Department of Arts and Culture, Recreation and Sports, as well as the Film Publication Board. And of course, I am not alone today. I am with Bianca Tusi, Khodisa Mankuno, and David Simuzingwa, and we will be talking about the importance of documentary filmmaking within the youth. Now, before we start, I just want to remind you guys that the Gauteng Film Commission has an open relief fund for the COVID-19 pandemic. You can go to their website, www.gautengfilm.org.za, to apply. And with that said, good afternoon, ladies and gents, and welcome to today's session.
Hello.
Hi, Bianca. Are we all here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. As I have said, we will be talking about the importance of documentary filmmaking within the youth. And I believe each and every one of us here has somehow released a documentary of some sort. And I think before we get straight into it, can I ask that each one of you guys briefly, in less than a minute, tell us who you guys are? And I will start with Bianca.
Okay. I'm a film producer, screenwriter, and camera operator. So I do most of what I do is film producing. That's what I love. And I'm currently working on a documentary film, feature-length film called Generation Free.
Davidson?
I'm a storyteller. I tell stories, but predominantly in film. I am a film director and also co-organize a festival called Africa Human Rights Film Festival, where we train young people in filmmaking. So it's storytelling all the way.
Something interesting about Davidson is that he was a journalist and he got bored, so he decided to come to film, which is very interesting. And Khodisa Mang,
I'm a filmmaker, I'm a producer, director, and I'm working on my first feature film. It's called Black Women in Sex. What's with the face?
It's very interesting. I'm expecting to see Dr. Tlaleng there. So before we get into it, documentaries in the youth, is there even interest in young people creating documentaries? And if not, how do we spark interest? Khodisa Mang, I'll start with you.
I think there is a big interest, especially these days. We are a very conscious society, socially conscious society these days. I wouldn't say these days, but like now it's more visible. And people are watching more and more and more documentaries, and people are wanting more different voices to be heard and seeing gaps in the market to say, where are the transgender voices, where are these type of voices? So it's definitely growing. You see sold out documentaries like what's that R. Kelly documentary, Surviving R. Kelly. Everyone will watch it and it'll break records, 13th by Ava. Like, people are really, really watching documentaries. And I think the standard of documentaries, like creative documentaries, has gone much higher in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I agree with Khodisa Mang. People want to have their stories being told, and not in a form of a reality TV show or something of a soapy kind of content. People want to be relevant and stay current and want to know what's happening around me, gender-based violence, for instance, being young as well, like where have we've come so far, but what's happening, so we need to stay relevant and know what's going on and I think documentary is the first step to document where we are right now and what we're doing in society.
And I think another thing is documenting our heritage and history as young people, because as Africans, we get history by orally getting it from our family members. So with the last generations dying out now, with our grandmothers and grandfathers, it's going to get filtered out, because people just do what they remember, and they don't, we don't preserve our heritage and history. So documentary is definitely a good way to do that.
Speaking of preserving history and culture, Davidson, your documentary is about a language that is an African language that is on the brink of going into extinction. How easy was that convincing sellers that this is a selling documentary? How easy was getting funding and making sure that the documentary is made eventually?
I think in getting funding was the major challenge of this documentary, because firstly, it was an urgent story. But when the time that we did this documentary, we had 3 elders that were left that could speak this language, which is called Ngu, in the Komani San community in the Kalahari in the Northern Cape. So we have 3 people that are left. The youngest then was 84 years old. And the agents of telling this story, and also the story represents the plight that most of our languages are facing in the world, because they're being replaced by some of these dominant languages like English, French. So we wanted to tell this story that could to everyone. And unfortunately, in the cycle of funding in the film, the cycle is very slow. You apply now, the council sits in 4 months' time, they approve. For you to get the first tranche, it will be next year. So that slowness really pushed us to do the story with our savings, because we regarded it as a slow. We approached other broadcasters to fund it at the beginning as well. And that frustrated us. And we thought we could be very innovative as young people. What we had then as young people was energy and time. So we utilized our energy and time to come with innovative ways of how do we do this thing on our own. And when it was finished, and this is a document that came out well, then funders jumped into it, because they can see something that is done, it's beautiful, it's going to festivals. So it was during the marketing and the distribution that we really got funding on Lost Tongue that we pushed ahead, which was a rude awakening. But if you believe in your story, run for it. Funders will jump into the wagon as you move. If you stop, you never tell any story.
Exactly.
And I mean, Bianca, yours is quite different, because you are literally right now sitting with your documentary and it hasn't been seen. Talk to me about what COVID has done to that, and perhaps maybe is this a rude awakening that as young people we should look into the digital space of distributing our films?
Yes, definitely, 100%. I'm 100% pro digital, always digital B, that's me. But what I've learned is we need to be current, because when I pitched the film and when I started the film, I already knew that our target audience, young people, are not watching SABC, if we had to be honest. They're not watching television like they used to. They're only watching it because we're sitting with Gogo and we're sitting with adults. But honestly, we are here. Everything we do is here. And, Netflix is here. Everything that we want to watch is here. So I think what COVID-19 has done, because initially we wanted to release the film on the 27th of April, which marks 26 years, of celebration of being a free generation. But because of COVID-19, we weren't able to do those nice dates and, that type of heritage going on. So we realized that it's so important to keep digital. And how are we going to start marketing ourselves digitally with a story like this? How are we going to, tell it, especially with the budgets that we are allocated with? We are not, for instance, this is my first big film. So it was important to me to practice that digital kind of connection, you know, and that digital feed with people around me, my friends and their families' friends, and etc., etc. And it creates this community digitally where, you know, this story is literally not just mine, but for you, for you, for you, for you, for you, you know, and it connects everybody. So I'm very happy how COVID-19 happened, but I'm also sad because it's quite difficult to make money digitally, you know, to market a film. But it also opened, like Davison said, it opened new avenues and new ways and innovation and stretching yourself, you know, because your film won't be made if you just keep quiet.
Yeah. And Khodisamang, you talk about Black women in sex in your documentary, and perhaps using the documentary as a form of feminism and activism at large. And we in South Africa, where a lot of topics on screen are still very shone upon, your LGBT stories are shone upon, you know, your women's stories are shone upon. How are you able to distribute? How are the distributors taking your documentary when you come as bold as you are and speaking about such a bold topic?
With me, I feel with the industry right now, I think there was a 50-50 by 2020 movement that started in 2016. So there are a lot of female-led projects and female LGBTIQ projects that are really, really wanted in the market right now, female directors. I mean, we haven't reached 50-50 by 2020, but now we're moving towards 50-50 for the future. So distributors and sales agents really love the project because it's on cue with that kind of movement, and with activism like Me Too being so successful, and here at home with Swift doing the anti-harassment campaigns as well. Women are really standing up, and it's not about you know, being let in. It's about us taking a stand as female filmmakers and owning our place in this industry and telling our stories without any kind of going back in any kind of way, in like no shying away from that. Yeah.
And what makes a bad documentary? Davidson?
I think documentary storytelling is about the rootedness to authenticity and truth, and also objectivity. So if your documentary is not based on those, then it's a bad documentary. We see more programs that are coming, or more productions that are coming with a tech documentary, but you can see that this is not an objective story. This story is pandering the whims of a funder. Clearly, if it's a big corporate, then it's a bad documentary. A bad documentary is when you're trying to imitate or to emulate some culture, let's say the American culture, and you're trying to tell a story based in the Northwest Province, in the Free State, but you don't have that rooted that you're telling the story to the people that you're telling the story, because you're recording history. And this history that you're recording will also be history in the future. So if your documentary is failing to have that authenticity, objectivity, and based on truth, then it's a very bad documentary.
And I mean, I think a lot of, especially on TV in South Africa, we see a lot of things and they say a documentary about COVID-19 is coming or whatever. But you watch and you realize this is just another form of reality programming. It's not a documentary. It's not giving two sides. You know, if this could have been an article, this could have been an interview, you know, because I think more than anything, like you said, it needs to be to start conversation. If anything that we're doing as documentary filmmakers is to start a conversation, to have a beginning, middle, and end, to say that this is what perhaps COVID started, and leave people to be able to talk. Speaking of people talking, I just want to remind the viewers on the Facebook Gauteng Film Commission Facebook page that they can leave their comments, questions, and whatever on the link, and I will get back to them as we continue with today's discussion. And while we're still on you, Davidson, you talk about a local language. Tell us, please give us just a brief description of what the film is, and then your comparison, because I think your documentary came out 2 years ago, so it's been around longer. So you can talk to me about the comparison between how it was received locally as well as outside the country.
So the documentary, when we made it, I think we made it over a period of 4 years, which was a lesson as well. That documentaries are like wine; they become better with time as you tell them. Initially, when we planned to make this documentary, in our youthfulness or in our exuberance as youth, we were like, okay, in 6 months we'll be done. We'll film this, we'll film done too, and everything we're done, we package, we send. It never happened. Time flies when you're making documentaries, and you won't believe it. Just as you can think. But once we're done making this documentary, the issue was now, how do we distribute it? How do we attract the attention that this documentary need? Our premiere was in New York with a festival called Socially Relevant Film Festival. The documentary was not yet known much then. And then we won an award with the Women Film Critics Circle of Chicago. That's when it really cascaded into something that was like a global phenomenon. More festivals got in touch with us asking for the documentary. Locally, we also went through all the festivals locally, like Durban, Encounters, Zanzibar, all these festivals. The documentary was also there. And I think all in all, we toured more than 15 festivals and 2 awards, the one in the US and also the one in Canada, in Toronto, where it was second best feature documentary. So that surprised us. But what surprised us more was the distribution locally. We wanted to be on TV. We pushed on TV. And you know the kind of energy that you get when you're talking to a broadcaster, you go to another pitching meeting, back, it looks like, yep, it's gonna be on TV. It didn't happen again. So we're pushed pillar to post. And it's the kind of frustrations that you encounter when you are talking to broadcasters or even funders. It takes time, takes frustrations, so much so that you can have stress if you don't have a support structure. But then we were lucky in a way that we pushed the whole format of pushing it online, but also communities. We wanted to take this documentary to communities. And we had a foundation that saw a need into this issue of reviving culture and indigenous language, so much so that we got funding, tour with the documentary in the Northern Cape and also in Botswana, which was the most heartwarming thing for you to showcase your film with people in the community. In the cities, you struggle. At a cinema Novo, 20 people will come. You go to these villages, it's 300 people sitting. You don't even advertise. At night, projector is up. People, the whole village streams to come and watch this documentary. So that really was the whole distribution strategy. And the media was generous after the awards, so much so that we were covered by all kinds of media, from business publications, television, and that helped to push our profile up, which helped in the documentaries that we made after that, because it was easier to acquire funding from development and also production, because with the profile, the seen on media, the documentary had done well. So that's how the journey of Lost Town was. And we're happy. We are fairly happy as it is.
Well done.
That is lovely. Aside from funding and distribution, this is now to everybody. Bianca and Kodisama, I'd also like you guys to come in. What's the most difficult thing that you experience as a filmmaker in this country?
Okay. As a filmmaker in this country, for me, can I start? Is the fact that you have to reintroduce yourself, as a person who is 4 years experience, 5 years, it's still not enough. People are looking for 25 years, your same age, or, et cetera, et cetera. So it's about reinventing yourself and finding a reason to have funders actually promote you and support you in what you're making, your film. And as a filmmaker, I think we do need a little bit of support in this country, and we need a lot of support in our sectors, you know, be it the government's Department of Arts and Culture, and so many of them, you know, not for a campaign of empowering the youth, but an activation of really standing behind entrepreneurs, filmmakers, designers, arts, because we really have great talent here, and it makes me sad that all you see is on Instagram. You don't hear about it on television. You don't really, you know. So that's my difficulty as a filmmaker.
For me, I share the same frustrations as Davison, who's talked about how slow the process is. It's very slow. I'm not talking about the filmmaking process. I'm talking about the process of getting funding, because being in documentary means you are shooting things as they happen. So sometimes you don't have the luxury of waiting for 4 months. So, and then you miss out on content, or you suck yourself dry trying to capture this moment. And for me, that's the most frustrating thing.
And I mean, comparing fictional TV with documentaries as general in the country, I think there's more funding for characters that kill people than there are about real stories that are happening now and then. You know, you will get a call to come submit about some villain who doesn't have a husband who kills people before you get a call to come tell a story about Youth Day 1976. And there's a question here that comes from Tam Sanga, and it says, how does one produce a good documentary that stands out? Khodisamang, since at the Durban Film Mart, you won most promising documentary.
I think, you know what, the story, I feel, needs to be authentic, as Davison said, but I also think a strong documentary needs strong characters. So the people, the leads that you choose for your documentary really, really have to be strong and have a presence. And also when you sell your product, you have to prepare. You know, like a lot of the time you think your story is good, and you know your story is good, but you neglect the preparation that comes into things when you have opportunities, when you have pitching, when you go into film festivals. You really have to prepare. You really have to be very mindful with your pitch and your trailer and the advice that you get. And a lot of people are very shy to show people their trailers and talk about their films, just because it's not made yet or it's still in the process. But the more you pitch, and not just to industry professionals, but to everyone, the more insight you get about your story, and the more you can prepare for it, and the more you can strengthen your project.
And we talk a lot about, going back to what we were talking about just before the question from the audience, we complain a lot about not getting support, the frustration of not getting funding, you know, the industry as a whole being all it is. How can the government and organizations such as the GFC, the provincial-based film commissions come into play, the NFVF and all, to make sure that the industry and filmmakers are fully supported throughout?
I think they've been doing a great job with the workshops, the application workshops, when like how to go through the applications, because a lot of people struggle with the paperwork. But I think they could release the funding quicker and feedback quicker for the funding, especially with documentary, knowing the nature of it. That's,
I'd want to chip in there. I think the whole funding model of films should have a complete change, like a 360-degree kind of, because the funding at the moment, you look at film in particular, NFVF is the most prominent agents that fund films out of women filmmakers across the country. You also look at the incentives that come through the DTI where they also fund films either as incentives or also part of funding. And then these kind of provincial kind of film commissions who don't really fund much, but we also have broadcasters who also fund. Here is something that has been controversial for years about the issue of funding to filmmakers as held by broadcasters and also film agents. The issue of the budgets that they get from the government. The budgets that they get from the government, you weigh the operational costs, let's say of SABC, we're reading it in the news this last week, the operational costs of SABC from the total budget and the funding part of it. Maybe 60% or 70% of the total budget goes to operational costs of the office, and only 30% will go to the funding. That will not sustain an industry. And this permeates across all funding agents that we have from NFVF and also DTI, that the total budgets of these institutions, 70%, 6% goes to salaries and on a serious way, so that filmmaking, because we are archiving our history here and the way we live, it doesn't come as an afterthought. It should be a priority. If it's a priority, then you fund good money. You look at countries that are overseas in Europe, you go to those pitchings or those film markets, you see the budgets that the filmmakers are putting here when they're pitching stories. It's like 200,000 euros for a documentary. We applied for another funding of our document that we're trying to make. We're turned down, not that our treatment was bad, not that our story was bad, but because they thought we under budgeted. They said, no, this is a low budget. So we are turning you down for that. So I wish we could have that problem in the country where we're turned down for having low budgets. So we should change that. Yeah.
I just want to add on as well with regards to budget allocation for different sectors. So you've got your independent producers, you've got your commercial producers, and then you've got your up and coming, you know, like NFVF has a very great application form with the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And I think it can be extended so far to a point where not everybody needs to have that same commercial budget if they are a tier 3, you know, or if they're an aspiring producer. We need to really understand that each and every sector needs to be specialized specifically for that age group and that experience group and that producer. And we need to really start that, because in America, you have independent filmmakers that are doing really great storytelling, but you know, we don't do that here. It's almost as if you need to be famous and popular in order to reach commercial exploitation. So,
And I also suppose training also comes into play when we talk about this, because right now there's the Youth Filmmakers Program that is open for, you know, short films, 24-minute short films and fictional films. There's going to be the youth directors probably being open again, the female filmmakers and what, and very little of the training in the documentary space. So I think that also plays a very big role in us not being able to go out there and tell stories. Perhaps if we can have a youth filmmakers program, we can have a youth documentary filmmakers program as well. And another thing that came to my mind when we talk about pitching to the broadcasters and for funding is the issue of IP. There's a lot of talks about material being stolen by, you know, people. So how do you handle that? Khodisamang, I know you've worked with the Writers Guild, so perhaps take us through the process of trademarking and copywriting rather your work before you go to pitch.
The Writers Guild has an excellent registry for your project. So you can just become a member of the Writers Guild of South Africa. I think the annual subscription is 350 rands. And then you just submit your project and they copyright it for you. They keep it for you. And then if it helps you sleep at night, then the copyright is there. And you can do an affidavit at the police station, write it up, and you have it, because a lot of some international funders require that kind of right to say, this is your story, you own the IP of the story. But in terms of people being scared of people stealing the ideas, we get that a lot. People really say that a lot. You go to a pitching, place, and then next thing your format is there and you're just like, this looks familiar. But I mean, I don't think I don't lose sleep over that. I feel like ideas are generally there are only 7 stories in the world, and also nobody can tell your story the way you would tell it. So I reject the idea that someone can steal it from you.
Yeah.
They can try to tell it like you have the same idea, but they can't steal it from you. But you can go the extra mile and join the Writers Guild, join the registry, get an affidavit at the police station. Yeah.
I agree 100%. It's execution. Everybody's going to have an idea, but it's how you execute it. I mean, you know, Born Free is, yay, we know about it, but it's your execution about it. How are you doing it? What makes it different? What is your selling point, you know, your vehicle selling points about the film?
And I mean, I suppose if we're going to be sitting with our work saying that people are going to steal it, you know, we're never going to get any work out there.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more, like, the thing that grows work is feedback, constructive criticism. So you're never going to get that if you're scared that people are going to steal your work.
True. Davidson?
It's the worst mistake that looking back when I started filmmaking, the worst mistake that I made for a couple of years was keeping stuff, saying, I think I have the best idea in the world. You don't have the best idea in the world. Ideas fly around. So the worst mistake that you can make as a young person is to keep your idea and hold on to it, saying, if I share it with these people or the commissioning editors or the funding agents, they'll steal my idea. For me, it's rather you have the idea stolen and the story is told than to keep it and the world will never see that story. Yeah. But yes, the fear of stealing of ideas, you go to festivals, film markets, it's always controversial. Or filmmakers talk to a panel of broadcasters or teacher that I saw something on the screen that looks like my idea or something that is aligned to that. But also when you apply to broadcasters like the SABC, young people should also know that when you're submitting your proposal, SABC will make you sign an indemnity form that says, I agree that I'm submitting this idea, and I also agree that another person somewhere might be thinking of an idea that sounds or looks similar to my idea. You're literally surrendering yourself, but it's part of the world, man. Keep sharing the ideas and get good feedback, as Hudsamang says, and then we'll learn and grow our ideas from there. Yeah.
That is absolutely true. And I think it's for example, if we take after this post-COVID-19 era, how many documentaries are going to come out of this? How many films are going to come out of a group of people trapped in a pandemic? You know, there's going to be a lot of premises that are coming out, but it's the execution of each and every one of those that matters the most, I suppose. And the different genres in documentaries, and also taking into consideration that spending a day in a celebrity's life is not a documentary, it's a reality show. So what are the different genres outside just of telling the, you know, political stories or the stories about murder? What I believe there's some form of entertainment in documentaries. You can do documentaries about so much stuff out there. What other genres can the young people explore? And how easy is it to get lighter topics out there, if I could say that?
Well, for me, I like art. I love art. I love visual art. I love artistic poetry. And I like to infuse that with the story because, you know, you can take a serious topic and just add in some color, you know, and just add in some artistry and visuality and, you know, show the person's clothing. You know, you can make you can make documentary out of fashion. You know, it's about what interests you the most, and like how are you going to add flavor? How are you going to add your uniqueness to it? You know, and how you're going to then you are creating already your own type of genre with the filmmaking, because I think maybe that's why documentary is so, you know, when people hear it, it's like, oh, you know, because they know it's serious matters. But I think as young people, it's so important to say, hang on, no, we're gonna lit it up. We're gonna put it, it's gonna be on fleek, you know, like we're gonna switch
Yeah,
it.
yes,
Like,
yes.
you know, so that's the advantage we have, is that we can take matters that are really, you know, passionate about, and we can just, you know, add some spice.
I'd like to add to that. I feel, especially as young filmmakers, we need to experiment so much. We need to experiment so much more and really make the kind of content that we ourselves are excited about. You know, when you get into an industry, sometimes when you're still starting out, you are very scared to do something new or try something that you particularly like you enjoy, and you just like, you know what, I just want to bring this out there, put it into the world. I think it's your time. You must do it. Like, you must do it. And because we are in such a developing industry, you can contribute to the language of cinema in Africa with the more we experiment, until we find what a cinematic language looks like.
Do we have a cinematic language?
It's still developing. I think it's developing, and the youth can contribute to that.
Yes.
How?
By being experimental, by telling their stories and finding what excites them, and bringing their unique vision to the world.
But also, I just really, really want to add, sorry, is that we need to study. Like, we need to know what we're shooting. We can't just hold a camera and just call that filmmaking. Like, I don't want to be seeing terrible films. I want to be seeing perfect lighting. I want structure. I want planning. We need to learn this, you know, and I think this is, if we're going to build the bridge between young storytelling and professional or 25 years experience, we need that bridge of understanding technical experience with our creativity. It's so important, guys. I get tired very quickly, hey, with bad sound and bad lighting. And I know you want to tell your story, but I can't. You know, I can't watch after 5 minutes. It's so important to have skill.
True. And I think training also comes from giving young people opportunities to experiment at a young age. Because if I'm gonna graduate and chill for 7-8 years, not working, the day I get work, I'm going to want to feed my family. So I'm not necessarily going to, you know, care about that. And maybe just to get a bit controversial, Davidson, do you think as a male in this industry, you have more advantage than Bianca and Khodisama in the documentary space?
Yes. I think I do. The fact that there's organizations that are representing the rights or advocating for women artists or for women filmmakers like Swift, really pushing those rights. The fact that there are organizations like that that are still relevant, it means that male filmmakers have an advantage over females. I've gone to different pitching sessions at SABC, NFVF, and the panel, maybe 80% of it is male. It's male. That alone, if the panel is dominated by men, then you know how the decision is going to be. And the fact that when there's a call for funding on a funding foundation like NFVF, then they put a subtext at the bottom that some sort of priority will be given to female filmmakers. That alone tells you that males are dominating, and that needs to change, because the issue of storytelling, as we're growing up, every African will tell you here that their first exposure to stories were being told by their grandmothers who are females. These are the matriarchs
Around the fire
that built the African kind of zeitgeist in terms of storytelling. The first voice that you heard was that of your mother when you're in your womb. All those kind of things when your mother is whispering to you when you're in your womb. So why is it that when we are out here in the world now, we are suddenly born, we think that men can do better stuff than women? We think men can actually do better adventure documentaries, can go to the rugged terrain, and not women? Why not? So I think that issue needs to be dealt with. And I wish we could get to an era where we don't need to say preference will be given to filmmakers, or the company that is applying that will be given should have at least 51% female. We need to pass that, because it should be natural that it's 50-50. Why is it that men are dominating? It needs to, and stories of harassment that you get on set. People are filming females that want to be on set, they're harassed by directors, and those, they need to end. So really, I have an advantage as a man,
I suppose that's what Kgodisa was adding on earlier by saying that the 50-50 by 2020, right, Kgodisa, vision. And obviously we haven't gotten there, and we hope to get there and stuff. But I suppose this is why organizations that like the SWIFT exist, which are very important in, balancing out the gap, if I could put it that way.
I could just add,
okay.
Just add to what Davison was saying. It's more than just numbers to say women are here. Like it's a shifting of power. Where what this male dominance does in the industry is put females, that's how gender-based violence happens. And when the decision makers are female, are men, and they are harassing women and raping women and all kinds of sexual assault, that's how it happens. So with women, not just in film, but in leadership positions, in decision makings, in panels, in juries at the festivals, that's what we need.
Yeah, to balance out that structure and to balance out stories.
So that the shifting power can be equal, and then that's where real empowerment can come from.
Exactly, I agree.
And how are these dynamics in, let's say, film festivals?
I mean, it's the same. It's the same everywhere in the industry, I think. It's the same kind of imbalance with the positions of powers and men getting their voice and getting the stories that they want, or the people that they want. Yeah. The fact that when we started this discussion, the first question was the fact that how are you so bold with a female story? That says something. It says someone is allowing me to be bold, or someone, I can't just do it on my own.
Yeah. And I suppose also I think I did this when I said bold, and I deliberately posed it like that because I don't think that being a queer filmmaker myself, approaching the industry with queer stories, it becomes so I can only imagine how it is also for a Black female filmmaker to be like, I want to talk about sex, and I want to talk about sex with regards to females.
Yeah, because these things are happening. These things, we can't just hide around and say, oh my God, only men are doing the sex, only men are, we need to have a space where each and every creative person expresses their story, expresses their content, expresses it without needing to justify it every time. Like, oh, you're doing this. Oh, it's by this. Oh, it's a female. Oh, it's a queer. It's so important we have a space of people who are comfortable to just share what they need to share.
And how has this pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, amongst many other pandemics that we have, GBV, how has it affected you guys as creatives, as documentary filmmakers?
Well, for me, it affected me. It put a whole halt to the production. We were following a court case. One of the main characters in the film is a transgender woman, and she was going through a court case where another, like a cisgender woman, attacked her for using the female bathroom. And this is a case that is in court and ongoing, and it had to stop abruptly because of COVID-19. And the other two characters in my film are from Zambia and Nigeria, and we know the borders are closed. So, yeah.
And you can't keep getting funded for something that you're not providing.
Well, yeah, it's not stopping me from applying for funding. So we should.
And-
Hopefully, borders will be open soon.
Yeah, Bianca.
For me, it's always been about location shoots because, you know, as documentary filmmakers, we can't, it's not only just staying indoors, like we have to be out there with society. We have to see what's happening in society. So that blockage of, you know, COVID-19 has stopped and put a production on a halt, on a stop, where I can't continue further in really adding that last element of a scene, you know, that can be so powerful in the story, because I need to wait until stage one happens, or I need to wait until, you know, people are able to sit together in communities and really have conversations, you know. So it has put a halt in that, because so far it's just been individual conversation, but not a group collective conversation. So that has stopped me.
I think a change for me, when I look at it, it's more structural. The agents for this year, for 2020, was all shifted. If it was in the film agents, if it's any department of arts, it's all changed or themed to COVID. It has to be a COVID response fund. So it means all those mainstream kind of fundings that they provide for telling those stories, it's stopped for now until post-COVID. So that alone is a serious. We need to wait for another year to access mainstream funding that has nothing to do with COVID. And secondly, it's a whole psychological change of things. If you've been telling a story midway, you're telling a story, you're filming, COVID comes, the storyline changes because your character is no longer feeling the same, they're in a different mode, so your story is changing, which for some reason will be a good way, but it changes everything. So for me, that change has been structural, and I think we'll see a lot of the effects of these things after COVID next year. We don't know when. Everyone is saying the new normal. We shall see in the new normal when we come out with all these.
But how do we bridge that in the meantime?
This right here is bridging it. Digital, you know, and not just doing it because it's June. This is my problem. We shouldn't just have conversation like this because it's June 16 or it's June. You know, we should have this constantly. And I think using platforms like this, Zoom, speaking and really realizing, you know, because you'll sit with yourself and again your own idea, but you're not really engaging. You're not feeling what's going on in other people's feelings or other people's homes, or you know. So this here, I think it does a great change, and we need to continue having conversations like this.
And I mean, at some point, we don't have to wait to get funded for feature films. A 5-minute short documentary is a documentary. A 1-minute documentary is a documentary. Davidson has to leave us now, I am guessing. So I would like to give each one of you ladies a chance to ask him something. And then after that, he will give us how to contact him and how can the people get to see his documentary. Yeah.
I'd
Bianca?
like to,
okay.
Start.
Should I go?
Yeah, I'll go first.
I'd like to ask him, because you only got a sales agent and funders after the film was made, did you, were there hiccups along the way, like because it's already a done deal, did you feel like maybe if they'd come in sooner, then you'd have a better product, or you would have done it more differently? That's the question.
I think I was happy. I was happy that they come later because the story was a different story. So sometimes when funders come early during the development or production, then they bring the other ideas. In my mind, we had this whole story that we needed to tell in a very different way. So that alone, that we didn't have that albatross of funding and the way we should tell the story was great, because we told the story that we wanted. And we also told the story that the narrative wanted, because the narrative at some point, it shifts you on its own. So we're literally led by the narrative, and we told that story. When it came out, it was a sentimental project that everyone liked and of all the people that we worked with in distribution, no one really had a problem with it, because I think the project was more spiritual. Everyone would watch it at some point, would shed a tear. So that alone helped us. And it doesn't mean that it works in every project. You need funding from the beginning, like development, as we saw in other subsequent programs or documentaries that we did, that you need that muscle, otherwise you won't do anything. So yeah, it helped us that we had no one but ourselves.
Can I just add in, as an advice as well, with my film is currently in production, post-production, and the narrative keeps changing and the budget keeps changing. How would you advise me to, have funders come in board in a semi-closed, finished production that is still in preparation of a distribution factor that might have to change even further because of COVID-19, if you get what I'm saying? Because it's constantly changing this year. It's not staying the same. The storyline's not staying the same, and the output and the outsource and the marketing is also not staying the same. So what advice would you have?
So at that stage, you're balancing a lot of variables. What you want the film to be, and what the film itself wants to be, because it's a different human being altogether, that film, and what external stakeholders want the film to be. If you show them at this moment, they'll be like, we think you can change here, which will be painful to you. Yeah. So you're balancing, you're playing three things. And at some point, as the director and you have the authorial voice, you want the project to go in a particular direction, and there's a time where you want to say, that's it, I'm cutting it off here. It still wants to go, it still needs a life, but I think it will have a life after post-production. So you're constantly balancing those three things, and I think you just need to balance it so that you're not carried away without events are changing from COVID and everything. You can still tell the COVID narrative or subtext through nuances that are there, not like what everyone is doing else. So you need that authorial voice as a director to say, I'm cutting it here, or I'm proceeding, but just with nuances as I go. Yeah, I think that is possible, and that is up to you. And what was the last question? People can contact me on email. Yeah, my email is davymax, DAVYMAX @gmail.com, or on my Twitter. My Twitter is @Murena Mushomi, and Facebook, Davison Mushomi Mudzingwa. And then we can talk anything, we can share. It's breaking bread as we share ideas. The world is shared ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's a young filmmaker out there, a young documentary filmmaker out there, who was on the brink of making it just before the COVID-19. What would you like to say to them as your parting words?
I'll say to them, the world is shaped by some metaphysics that is beyond our control sometimes. Stuff is slowed down mostly for a reason. Painful as it is, it's a very painful patch for you to come as a motivational speaker and say, you will move a mountain, you will do this. People are dealing with reality here. I'm hungry, I had an opportunity of starting something, and it's not there, and they're telling me that I will need to wait until next year. But there's some serenity, there's some sustenance in reading the Times, and for you to really go back and read the Times. If we are all to share what we lost because of COVID, it's monumental. But what do? There's a lot happening now. Like currently, I was talking to a colleague that we thank COVID because we are accessing some of the information that would require us to pay 1,500 euros to access. Webinars are all over, people are offering that kind of information. So you should ride on that wave of collecting as much as you can using this whole COVID situation. After this COVID situation, you'll be better, richer in terms of dimension, richer in terms of knowledge. After that, you'll be unstoppable. So yeah, it's rough, it's bad, but let's change the whole dimension. Let's change the narrative from bad and see what's good about it. We can mourn and pity party the whole day or the whole year, but let's choose to be positive and look at the positive and go for bigger things after COVID.
Yes,
Yeah.
tell them.
Yeah.
Buffet.
People.
Buffet. Thank you so much, Davidson Mudzingwa. You can get hold of him on his Twitter. It's Morena Mohlomi, right? At Morena Mohlomi on Twitter, and on Facebook he says it's Davidson Morena Mohlomi Mudzingwa.
Yeah.
Right. And that will be all from him. If you want to contact him, please do so on his social media. Myself, Bianca, as well as Kodisamang continue on the conversation about the importance of documentary filmmaking in the youth. Thank you so much, Davidson.
Thank you.
And have a nice day further. Right. Davidson just left us there. And we're still here, ladies. I want to talk about next. Firstly, I want to give you guys an opportunity, just like I just did with Davidson, to perhaps ask each other something that you can learn from each other, just for a moment.
You go first, Bianca.
Okay, what was your experience with filmmaking from the word go to also having it in your film festivals or approaching film festivals, receiving their feedback from their panel? What was the feeling and the experience on your part?
The experience of what of going to film festivals and taking or the process. Are you talking about the feeling?
Yeah, the actual process from your beginning stage to your actual submission and feedback of the film festival platform.
When I started my project, I'll speak specifically about Black women and sex. I started it in 2016, and I went with it the way Davison did his film with but it was a documentary series. I did it independently. It had all the things that you hate: bad sound and lighting. But I learned a lot along the way. And what I didn't get was proper feedback and a proper crew to work with. And that's the disadvantage when you do things without the proper funding for the project. And then to get it to the film festival stages was actually that content, the content that I went out and I shot. I applied to funding with it, and then I got the funding. And then the more I got the funding, the more I could shoot better content. And then I use that better content to apply to pitching forums, and it helps when you actually take it that route and take it to film festivals. Because now I have like 3 awards attached to my project, and it's not even finished yet, So that's great. Then and people always bump into me like, "Hey, Mubu guy!" Like people are already. It's an advertising also tool to kind of get people anticipating and wanting to see the project. And that for me that was the difference, because when you do it independently, it's just you and your camera and your car and your little crew or whatever. And then when you do it through festivals and pitching forums and the proper support behind your project, that's when the kind of that's the influence, that's when it kind of pushes through.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And with your project, weren't you scared of making a story that is such like so many stories have been made, like for Born Frees and very, like it's such a similar story and such a rich historic thing in South Africa. So many documentaries have been made with that topic. Weren't you kind of scared to say, well, it's already been made?
Not at all. I watched everything before I started going in that path of executing it. And I realized with all of the Born Free stories was only told by an older generation about the Born Free. So that was my selling point, is that I'm 25 years old. I'm the same age as my country's freedom. And what have I seen so far? Where am I going? What has my dad gone through? What has my granny gone through? And so I personalized the story myself, and therefore I extended the narrative to how many young people are feeling the same way as me. And I thought that was my unique selling point to the film, is to actually have it directly by the youth, for the youth, and also to have that power, you know, that influence of generation after generation. We're really still an unfinished business of the past. So even if I am young and I'm youthful, I'm literally an unfinished business of my older sister, which she's an unfinished business of her mom. And, you know, it goes on and on and on. So that's how I literally broke it down and realized that, yeah.
I'm going to pose a question to you guys that was posed to me, I think, last year. So I did a short documentary on the famous hashtag Open Up the Industry. And one of the first few questions I got was, are you not scared that you're limiting your career with such topics? So I want to ask you guys, when you tackle these political topics, does it not daunt you sometimes to say that, what if I may have gone too far according to what is perhaps acceptable by those are the powers that are in the industry?
For me, I'll start. Please just repeat a bit the last section.
I was saying that, do you not perhaps fear that you may have gone too far, especially with political conversations that you spark?
Yeah. No, not at all. I think it's relevant. We've been hiding under the bush too long. You know, when people are saying, get over it type of thing, what are we getting over? What are we talking about that we need to get over? So let's talk about that first before, you know. So it makes me braver, it makes me bolder. I go even harder, you know, like it's about making sure that that content and that political reform must be changed in whatever dynamic or perception that I can do it in. And if it's coming from, again, like Davison said, if it's coming from a truthful place and an authentic place, then go for it, you know, because there's power in authenticity, there's power in truth, and truth is a frequency that we can all feel. So
Amen to that, Bianca. And the fact that, you know, we like to exclude ourselves from our films and say this is me, but I've been reading this book recently called The Vulnerable Observer. So when we make these stories that are things that affect us and things that are happening to us, and if you're feeling like, you know what, this industry is not open, like it's the same people getting jobs every single time, as you are making it, you are healing yourself. Like, as people are complaining and as people are sharing their insights, it helps you as an individual as well as the filmmaker. So I use it as a tool of activism, as a tool of healing, as a tool of learning and unlearning. And you can't limit yourself when it comes to that.
True. It is, because, you know, at the end of the day, that's what documentary is. We are activists in documentary filmmaking. You know, we are actively documenting society. So you are actively there with yourself, you're actively there with your own experience, you know, you as being a Black woman, you being a queer, you know, you opening up, you know, all of us, we are going through something that is so unique that I can't, you know, and so it's literally you're activating that conversation in society. So of course you're going to be an activist in your storytelling and in your filmmaking.
And on a lighter note, I mean, we all been on a set that things went absolutely wrong on. What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you on a documentary set? What's Bianca?
Nah, she must start. I need to just...
I think the worst thing that's happened to me on set, let me think. I don't think of anything like that out of the ordinary, like for on set, but the process of documentary filmmaking, I feel like it's ongoing. And for me, was shooting this when I was still shooting Black Women as Sex independently as a series. I was with this one camera guy who was with me. We were shooting for a whole 6 months together. And like what I say, it's the vulnerable observer. You feel like as you are changing and as you are learning, the people with you are changing and learning too. And sometimes that's not the case, you know. And at some point, we're in Cape Town where we're interviewing this wonderful woman, and we're at the hotel together because we're in Cape Town together. And he tried to make a move on me, and it just was just so disappointing because, as Bianca and you say, is the fact that we are activists. Like you actually believe in the things that you film and the things that are being said on screen, and you feel like this person is in this with me, and then it turns around and it happens on you.
Yeah.
And it's so disappointing and such a reality check to say we can make these stories and some people might never even change.
Yeah, 100%. I want to say that and add on that. I've been having issues with cameramen and sound guys, simply because, you know, they find, you know, first they see a woman, they don't see a producer. So now they see a seducer and not a producer. So it's really that line, that fine line that, listen, this is not, we are not here for, hey, sweetie baby, you know, vibes. This is serious, and this is, you know, this is a story, and can you get yourself together? And, you know, so that when we present this to the characters, it's so important to make the characters comfortable. And most times cameramen and these guys, they get out of line. You know, you see someone, you're interviewing a girl and she's sharing something, and they're not even about what she's sharing and about the comfortability as a crew film. You know, as crew members, we need to make it comfortable for our characters. But you'll see him after cut asking for a number, you know, and that boundary of like, what are you doing? Because then it really changes the dynamic of how comfortable she's going to be the next day of the shoot, where it's almost as if you slide into DMs, and now it's like, you know, that balancing of what is your profession versus what is your pleasure, you know?
And I think it also affects the authenticity of the story, because a subject wouldn't go as far as telling their honest opinions if they feel threatened or you know, harassed or frustrated in such in such situations. And that's also, you say?
I'm saying I think it's very important to work with like-minded people. Like, don't just hope someone is not going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. You must know that the type of people that you're working with, and especially when you're dealing with a very sensitive topic, I think it's very, very important. It's not just a skill set. You have to have the kind of personality and the manners and emotional intelligence to go with it.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we are dealing with psychology, you know. The camera won't lie, you know. We can cut it up and we can, you know, add some spice. But if the person's sitting there and the camera's capturing the person's mental state at that moment, and that person is also aware of who's behind that camera and who's, you know, so it's that vibe of, it's such a psychological thing. And I do agree that it's so important. We need to really start having proper people to just also have, you know, to realize that, yeah.
And perhaps start talking about having more females in the technical departments, because
you
know, it's also another complete different conversation on its own.
Yeah.
I wanted to also touch on, earlier on, Kodisamang, you mentioned that your film won awards at the festivals, local festivals, right?
International.
International, that's where I was getting.
One from the Durban Film Festival and 2 from Doc Leipzig in Germany.
Nice.
Oh,
fun.
Great.
Time.
I mean, I actually wanted to get to the international platforms and ask to say, how then do we get our work? Now we're sitting, let's say this is post-COVID-19, I'm sitting with a body of work. How do I get it on international platforms?
I think it's if it started on that landscape of pitching development and co-production markets, then you get it through there. Like let's say you're sitting with a body of work, now you want distribution, go to co-production markets around the world. And the JFC supported me when I went to Germany. They supported me. The DTI supported me with a couple of other festivals as well. So the government is very does have the funding specific for festivals and markets. So when you're sitting with a body of work, or when you are busy with a body of work, it doesn't even have to be finished. Apply to co-production markets, apply to pitching forums and international funding as well. Because a lot of the time we like to, Davison talked about the fact that it's the NFVF and everybody's trying to scratch at the NFVF. There's a lot of international funding out there, and the youth especially have to broaden their minds in terms of where to access funding. Now the World Cinema Fund is available for Africans as well, and a lot of other funding. So join the DFA, the Documentary Film Filmmakers Association, and the IPO, SWIFT, the Writers Guild. They have, it's easy information that just pops up in your email to say these are the funding opportunities that are available right now, and you apply for those fundings, and especially international funding to just help you get into the international market.
B, are we expecting to see the film on international platforms?
Of course. Like the fact that you mentioned Germany, I'm a home of Germans. Hey, I'm full support of Germans. I can speak German, and I think it's so important. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I lived there. I finished my high school there. So it's so great that I love that what they do, especially with South African films, they really support that, and they really back us so much more, sometimes in my opinion, than our own local TV stations. And I think it's so nice to know that connection and to have that. And yeah, I definitely want to, you can't speak too much. You need to go through the process. Yes. But definitely they are there. They are just shooting peanuts in the air, singing I love Bianca.
Thanks for Germans, I won't lie.
Definitely crossing fingers.
Sorry, I didn't hear you guys, sorry.
I'm saying I've gotten nothing but great things from Germans.
Yeah. Good.
And obviously we can't, in as much as we aspire to be on the international stage, and like you just said, Khodisaman, that Davidson said earlier on that we all go to the NFVF, but there's actually the GFC doing this right now. There's actually the incentive funds from the IDT, and there's the KZNFC. But I specifically want to talk to the provincial film commissions. We've got 9 provinces, but 2 provinces have a well-working commissions. How do we put pressure to make sure that these other provinces keep up?
You know what? I know that the Northwest have been trying to set up their film commission properly for a while now. And it just seems like back and forth and back and forth. I don't know what the inner politics is, but I know there's a group of filmmakers that have been actively trying to get it up and running for a while. And I don't know where the breaking point is, or where the miscommunication is. And that's what I'd like to find out from the government, actually, to say, what does it actually take? Like, what do you look at in a province to say, you know what, this province deserves well-running film commission and this one doesn't? Like, what is the criteria?
Yeah. For me, my second best, funder is KZN, because they are also developing on that platform like GFC. And I love the partnership that, they're trying to, uplift that, province, right? Yeah. They're trying to uplift that province, and they're trying to uplift young people in that province. My problem is everybody feels that they always need to come to Gauteng, to get started with their studies, with their, whatever, upcoming, what. And it's so sad because yes, there is space for that. I'm not a person who wants to cut ties, but I do want the country as well to also come up with ways to empower every young person in that market. You don't have to fly somewhere else to make it. We have that thing in our hearts where, like, being filmmakers as well, we will only be successful if our film is international. It needs to also start local, where you grew up, where you come from, because you're telling that story. That's an investment to that province, and that's an economic circle which cannot be ignored simply because you're young and because money is somewhere in the atmosphere of being used incorrectly. It's quite, there's a backlash. It really affects all of us at the end of the day.
That's absolutely true. I mean, speaking to the Northwest, I'm from the Northwest myself, Hudi, and I have been also on that. But you guys said you're doing this. How do we, get to it? And even speaking to documentaries specifically, we were talking earlier on about the fact that the cultures and the traditions and the languages are somewhat being extinct. And I think if provinces can come into finding these, because one thing that our provinces are is that they're somehow segregated according to our languages, which is a really bad thing. But if provinces can come together and contribute into telling African stories the African way, I think that there can be a lot of improvement in the industry.
And not just with provinces, with Africa as a whole. If we can push the Pan-African movement in our documentaries as well.
Afrocentric, exactly. I agree. Afrocentric education, Afrocentric filmmaking, Afrocentric entrepreneurship. We're basing so many of our skills on Western mentality, and we're basing it so much on how do we do it so that it looks like this, it sounds like this, and therefore we're speaking more English when in fact that the hometown doesn't speak English. So how do we literally centralize the African authenticity in our storytelling?
We have a question here, although I think we've covered bits and pieces of it. Musa Arthur Maluka says that they've just finished their first documentary and they need advice on distribution. How best can they go?
Okay, distribution is a very intense topic in South Africa. That's something that I really pray and hope the Gauteng Film Commission and the NFVF and teach us more about that, because it is so important that you already start that process as a producer. I start that process before I make the film, so that I have that letter of interest, that there is a partnership involved, and there is someone that sees the potential of what it's going to be, instead of seeing it as it comes. So that needs to be a conversation that needs to be taught and shared. That information needs to truly be shared. Also the industrial, the commercial exploitation of distribution must also be shared, because you go to distributors and then they're not necessarily licensing your film because it's good. They're just licensing it because it might make money, so, or it might have a certain audience. So that conversation and that contractual agreement between your film and the actual distribution licensing, where is it going to, who's going to see it, what platforms, we can't make films and then we don't watch it, we don't see it, and then next thing we hear that, oh, you made a film, that's our marketing strategy and distribution is like really on the low in South Africa, hey? And especially now because there's no cinemas, there's COVID-19. What are you doing as distributors to empower an online distribution platform for all filmmakers, young and old, you know? So that's a big conversation that needs to be in discussion.
On its own, yeah.
On its own.
Khudi?
Just to add on to what Bianca was just said, I think I was advised very early on to get a stills photographer while you shoot, just to kind of package your film right as you go along, and really start as early as you can to advertise. And look at Showmax. They like finished products. Yeah. So and it's a VOD platform, and DSTV Now, and there's a lot of VOD platforms out right now. And what's the advantage now with COVID is that people are more open to Wi-Fi, and people have more data and more Wi-Fi than they usually would have in South Africa. So people are watching those platforms. So look at those platforms for distribution.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And Bianca brought a very important point earlier on, and I think Kgodisama, you can touch on that. The difference between licensing and commissioning documentaries, as opposed to the TV. I know you've worked with broadcasters, Kgodisama. Do you perhaps care to enlighten us maybe on the licensing and the commissioning side of documentaries?
Well, licensing is borrowing, so you don't give away your IP. So it's just a kind of an agreement that you make with a broadcaster to say, well, I'm borrowing you this content for a period of 3 years, to say you can use it as much as you like for 3 years, but after those 3 years, I have it back and I can license it to someone else. And you see it. A film that really did well commercially is Love is a 4-letter word in South Africa, and I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it on DSTV. Now it's playing on SABC. I've seen it at the cinema. I've seen it on VOD platforms like DSTV Now. So it's just that kind of agreement to say you are licensing it. You don't. I wouldn't advise filmmakers to give away their IP, and really. Another thing with the arts is law. You really have to get an entertainment lawyer to draw up your contract. You need to get paperwork with the subjects in your film and the people that you work with, and that's something that we really take advantage of and just say, well, I work with good people. Let's just go and shoot. Let's just go and do it. That's very, very dangerous. And when you get to distribution, and now it becomes a problem. When someone sees themselves 1 million times on TV, they're like, where's my money? Royalties. What was the agreement? What was the agreement in the first place? So that is another thing. That's another topic on its own.
I want to add to what she said. For those who can't also afford lawyers, media lawyers right now, there are online topics that teaches you about creative industrial industries. So it's important to just, get in touch with what does that mean in terms of copyright. So Future Learn is somewhere that I also study and get my knowledge with regards to copyright infringements, copyright laws, what type of license, what type of use of rights. It's so important to just know this because information is everywhere now. So at least you have something that when you do get the money to have a lawyer, you do know how to break down that knowledge into a contract, which will really protect you and protect your commercial exploitation of whatever you're going to make in the future.
I actually tweeted there. Okay, go ahead.
And also with COVID-19, Davison touched on it before he left. He talked about the fact that there's so much access to information right now that would normally be so expensive to have. like accessing to film festivals from your computer, master classes that are going on right now, films, international films. There are so many techniques that people are not exposed to just because you haven't traveled and you haven't gone to international film festivals. And those are techniques that could work for you and your film. Like there's a lot of platforms right now currently streaming things for free, master classes for free. I'd recommend that people really make that a part of their day and a part of their learning experience.
Sure. And I actually saw on Twitter this morning that the Documentary Film Makers Association, I think they ran a competition, and they picked some of the best premises off of that and gave them like 200,000, if I'm not mistaken. This is not something you probably would get every day, because the documentaries were based off of life during COVID-19. I remember seeing one that says, when home is no longer safe for you as a queer person, and all those kind of stuff. And another point, I don't know, you guys are probably going to disagree with me on this. Documentaries in cinema, could they be a thing? Are they a thing?
Of course, like it has to. That's the only way. That's the truth. That's the light. We need to pump it up. Like we cannot be watching, like I think we had this conversation earlier, Oratile, where, what we consuming, we consuming a lot of violence, we consuming a lot of hate, and we consuming a lot of stuff that's just, at the end of the day, you watch a TV show. Can I mention the TV? Anyway, I won't. But you mentioned, should I? Just imagine watching Moja Love right now, and what have you learned? How are you changing your community? How are you feeling better as a human being? You know what I mean? Or are you enjoying bashing other people? Are you enjoying?
I love that show. Sorry.
Sorry.
I love that show. It's entertainment. Everything has its place. Everything has its place.
For me, I feel that's like that's what covers television now, where we've got people watching and they just want to, you remember like Zolo 7, where we just want to watch community-based, topics and stories, and we have problems as Black people. What's happening? What are we doing about it? Are we, and how are we really uplifting our confidence and mental liberation? So I think documentary is something that really will highlight all these society issues and be interesting as well.
Cinema.
So documentaries in cinema.
Yeah, documentaries can be in cinema. I don't like the idea that documentaries are like second class to feature films. I really don't like that. It's just about a question of, is cinema still alive in the way that it used to be? So that's a different topic on its own. You can cry and want to cling on to cinema, or you can move on to the future, which is digital. And some people are really embarrassed or shy to like watch things in front of other people at the cinema, like a topic about sex. It's like you're watching porn and you don't want to watch it with other people, and it's easier to watch it at home,
Yeah.
So it just, as long as it's getting to the customer and it's getting consumed, that's all I care about. It's not about, is it in the theater?
And I think as documentary filmmakers, we perhaps need to get to a point where we challenge the form of reality TV making in this country. Because like Bianca said, the only form of reality we have is what we have, is cheating families, it's bashing stories, it's that's all the reality programming. The alternative of that is the lives of famous rich people. When do we document the day-to-day lived experiences of the vast majority of South Africans? Because between a cheating husband and a rich wife who lives in Reimsburg, there's a whole lot of stories that can be told. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. Yeah,
think
continue.
I think what we're seeing a lot of is the really poor communities and then the really rich communities on TV, and the middle class is,
Yeah,
you know, in the sphere of all this, and there's a lot of issues there in the middle class, and it's up to the youth to kind of come in and make the stories. Where you see a gap, make a story, and you be the person to fill that gap.
Amen. It's very important.
Absolutely agree. So I was trying to get questions online, but it appears that my other device has crashed, so I cannot get there. I don't know if any one of you guys can check the questions there.
On the actual live feed, correct?
Yes, please.
So someone said pop-up cinemas also would be great. It's nice and intimate, instead of, the usual traditional way of doing it. I'm still getting more feeds, excuse me.
And I mean, perhaps that's what we should be looking at as documentaries, pop-up cinemas, because cinema culture in this country is not, on its own is a topic.
Yeah, and drive-in cinemas, especially now because of COVID-19, everybody's just like safe in a little car or vehicle. That's nice. That's nice. And that, what I like about cinema is the shared experience of everybody putting down their phone, and it's happening now, and you can't rewind it and you can't pause it, and you're sharing this experience together at the same time, and it's really a lost thing in our society, and I don't get used to it. I don't get used to it at all. It's a feeling that I love.
Definitely. Because at the end of the day, we need to start creating a market in South Africa that starts engaging stories visually. I think our filmmaking industry is not as big as we think it is, hey? And not everybody's watching local films. We will know a lot about, I don't know, something from overseas or America, but when it comes to Five Fingers for Marcellus or the people versus the patriarchy, or the giant must fall, or there's so many other stories that has been told. I don't think many people are watching locals filmmaking and local stories in that regard to cinema. So opening that conversation is so important.
Someone said that they don't think that remember earlier on, we spoke about what makes a bad documentary storyteller. And they also, at the beginning of this, we touched on creating interest around, sparking interest around making documentaries within young people. And I just saw a comment here right now. It says that they don't think that there's bad documentary films. They just think there's no interest. So I don't know. I personally somehow feel like that, because if you go to film school right now and you say you're going to be making documentaries, half of the class is going to go, but when you're told that you're going to be making a 24-minute short film, go write a script, we're all, getting high and excited. And I think as young documentary filmmakers in the country, perhaps need to start steering that more interest, especially by making the fellow youth filmmakers aware of the business opportunities. Because I think, because a documentary is something that you keep shooting, which also would mean that it's something that you can also keep seeking funding for. You can shoot it for as long as you want, because it's an ongoing story. So I do definitely think that we need to, find ways to create interest around the stories.
And I think with documentary, it can be cool. You see, the thing is, we've got an image of how documentary has looked like for so long. You know, when you sit with your family in that television room, and then you have someone, and in a nice black room screen, you have them just talk about, my life, and, talking heads. We can actually add in, a lifestyle with those talking heads. We can add in youthful things that keeps us music, has a way of keeping it lively. We don't have to make it so melodramatic where it's like, documentaries are going to be the death of me. It can actually be the life of you.
Exactly. And also there's such a huge market for documentaries overseas that don't limit yourself also to South Africa as well in terms of interest. And the funny thing is, when there's interest outside, then there's automatic interest.
Yeah.
And it's such a strange thing. Even with us as colleagues, as filmmakers, you might not be able to get a meeting with someone here at home, but you can get it in New York if you're both in New York. But it's you look at what is this? What's this new series? Blood and Water. Blood and Water. They were raving about it in America. Now everybody's watched it. It's sometimes you have to go that route to kind of get attention here at home. But yeah, the audience is there.
Yeah, true. I'd love for that to change though, because I think, we don't need, again, to sell ourselves overseas to be liked in our own country. Tsotsi has been a big factor of that. We never even knew Tsotsi until it won an Oscar.
Exactly,
You see what I'm saying? And it's so sad. Yeah, and it's so sad that, Will Smith has to advertise Chochi for us to realize that we've got Tsotsi right here, So how are we so far from our own narrative to a point where we only want to be celebrated when someone from somewhere else only celebrates us? Sad.
And I really think that's where Nigeria gets it right. Nigeria really supports the content, and that is why they have such a bigger film industry, bigger music industry.
Yeah.
They are the first consumers, and they think it's cool to be Nigerian, and they like the content that they produce. So I think,
and perhaps because maybe they tell their own stories, the best way they know how. They have their own film cinematic language that they know and understand, and they speak to their community. We can't exactly be expecting to tell the story of, I don't know, Superman in Hillbrook. Is Superman gonna jump off? You understand? And Khodisaman, I have a question here for you from the audience, and they're asking you that is there a business market for documentary filmmaking?
Yes, I think there is a business market for documentary filmmaking. That's where these forums are taking place. These when you go to film festivals and you check if there's a market, that market is the business side of documentaries. There's ITFA, Independent Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam. There's Hot Docs in Canada. There's Encounters here in South Africa. So there is that kind of business, and the funders are wanting fresh new ideas from the youth. And also Showmax. Showmax did a really, really, really good job, especially last year with commissioning a lot of documentaries. There's so many great documentaries on Showmax as well.
Yes, agree.
There really is. I mean, the last one that I watched was The Feast Must Fall documentary, which was really such a beautiful, story that happened 3 years ago. And to be able to watch when I was in the space of experiencing and living that moment is just, like you said, one form of activism that we use. And perhaps we still have a long way with documentary activism. We have our own pandemic, the gender-based violence in this country. It's a whole pandemic on its own. We've got so much more that we can cover with documentaries. and not just look into the outside world for some form of validation in creating stories for ourselves. Yeah. And what can we expect from you guys after this pandemic?
I'm actually developing a new film. It's called Dying Alone. Because of this pandemic, I'm following a young man, Bongani Ngobeni. He traveled from Johannesburg to Tzaneen when he found out he was tested positive for COVID-19. So it's the idea that people are scared to die alone, and this illness requires you to be alone and isolate and be away from your loved ones. But psychologically, emotionally, is that possible? And are we meant to be alone in the way that this pandemic is really pushing, you know? So that's what I'm trying to kind of do right now while we're in it.
Yeah. Agree. I'm working on an episode 2 of Generation Free because it's just not enough to just tell one story or one episode. Just continuing the economical infrastructure of young people and, you know, the economical structure of generations, you know, how are we accumulating wealth, you know, especially right now with the COVID-19, we have so many people who can't work and who are sitting, you know, at the back ends, not doing much right now. So where's this taking the country economically, socially, emotionally, psychologically, you know? And on top of that, again, with the gender-based violence, how are we attacking these issues? How are we confronting them? Or are we going to all keep indoors until one day Jesus comes and saves us? So it's really a matter of, you know, trying to keep the story going and keep it relevant as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many other stories out there. Load shedding itself is a pandemic of our own. So, do you understand? There's just so many stories for us, by us. And after the pandemic, how much of the traditional media do you think, and I know, Bianca, you're very passionate on digital media, you like me. How much of the traditional are we still going to be having?
You know what? It's going to expose itself because it hasn't traditionally opened up, you know, I mean, you know, open up the media and we were waiting, and then comes 2019, was the media opened? And now you're sitting with, oh, okay, you didn't open up the media, so I invented the media. So definitely digital conversations are still going to take place. It's faster, it's more cost efficient. And this is something that I keep rooting with GFC. Like, you know, I can't, and I refuse myself personally to have my content on television because of that process. You know, those blocks, the red tape, sorry. But I definitely want to tap into a media space would actually generate a global audience. We need to think bigger. We need to think wiser. We need to think smarter and faster. We can't be having same traditional tactics before COVID-19 and then after COVID-19, we're still doing the same thing. I will definitely go to Germany and get something.
And even outside of traveling to other countries, there's AVOD, there's content like YouTube.
Yes.
And that has really changed the game and really are growing much faster than traditional television right now.
Yes, definitely.
But I do think that even though we're walking away from traditional television because it refuses to change, we still somehow need to, you know, instill some form of, perhaps cornering that to say that at some point we're going to have to look at ourselves as an industry and fix it for the better benefit of our own stories.
Definitely. Like for me, I cannot be watching 26 years of the same narrative on prime time television. That's not going to happen for me. Like, even Bold and the Beautiful had an ending. Even Days of the Day had an ending. You know, so where's our ending in terms of narration? You know, there's so many great stories that can even fill up prime time. You know, it doesn't have to be from youth specifically, but it has to be from a global scale of storytelling. You know, we need to find a way of economically generating a circle of content. You know, another thing for me, I just want to highlight really quick, because I've noticed that we don't read anymore. We don't read books that were written by Credo Mutua or Steve Biko or, there's so many of them. I really would like departments of arts and culture. I'm putting you on the mark because this is my only time, but departments of arts and culture, GFC, NFVF, to create a library of Black authors and Black people who've already told these stories, and may we learn how to adapt books into film, books into TV show, into episodes. You know, we cannot be saying we don't have stories when we've got books, a gang load of books that are not visually shared and told. You get what I'm saying? So that's my huge change that I'd like to see, adapting from book to story and to film.
And I don't think we don't have stories. I just think those that are in power just don't look for the stories.
Exactly.
You know?
They don't look for it, create the same thing.
Yes, they're comfortable in that space.
Yeah.
Khadisamang, where can we see your film, your
documentary? I'm still doing it. It's not finished yet. Black Women and Sex hopefully will be done by the end of the year. We'll commence production by towards the end of the year. Yeah, so I will let you know. You can follow Black Women and Sex on Facebook and Black_women_and_sex on Instagram as well, to just keep up to date with everything that's happening with the film.
And Bianca, any confirmed?
My part, we definitely taking it digital. So this means online streaming apps. Like, we're gonna get it together. You know, just distribution platforms on an online market media, so that everybody, young and old, can watch it. And you can follow us on Instagram at @generationfree_, and also Honeybee Films. This is where we document day to day, or not necessarily day to day, but stage to stage about the film. You get to know the characters. They're very diverse. So not everyone has the same story because they have a different race than us, or they have a different background. So you get to engage and get to know who's who in the zoo. So yeah, it's all digital, guys.
All right, that is fantastic. Closing remarks as filmmakers in South Africa. How is it? How has it been so far?
It's been great. It's been a great learning experience. It's been a great growing experience. It takes a lot of bravery to come out and say, I want to make a story like this, or I want to make a story, or this is who I am, and present yourself to people. So I would like to be more brave, because it's something that I've struggled with as a newcomer, and I'd like the youth to also just draw into that inner bravery, help yourself with your feelings, and really just put yourself out there. And you don't know who might relate or what will become of your project.
Yeah. For me, I would love to tell everybody who's watching that there's so many varieties in ways of telling your story. You don't have to always be a editor or a director or screenwriter or an actor. You can also be a producer. You can also take it on yourself and say, hang on, my story is not told. Let me learn more about producing. Let me learn how to make nothing into something. I think also we need to learn that money is not everything. You can be an alchemist without money, and blessings and attractions and marketing schemes will come, so don't let money stop you from doing ABC. Find means right now in writing your script down, writing the ideas down, strategically planning, and things unfold gradually once you have a foundation of what you're talking about.
Yeah, you definitely don't have to figure it out in the beginning. Start where you are with what you have, and it will grow organically.
Exactly.
Definitely. As I think I said earlier on, that even a 1-minute film on YouTube is a documentary, If 2 minutes, 5 minutes, we've got cell phones, we're in the digital era, and we don't always have to wait for the NFVF to open a funding circle for us to. I mean, we don't always have to wait for September. We have a lot of time in our hands right now. And thank you so much, ladies, for participating in this beautiful masterclass. And I think we have reached the end of our session for today. And whoop, whoop, a huge thank you to our sponsors, the obviously Gauteng Film Commission hosting in collaboration with the National Film and Video Foundation, the Film Publication Board, as well as the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture and Recreation. We hope they heard your cry, Bianca, and that we will start seeing more of those books, because this is their platform. If you don't tell them on their platform, where are we going to tell them? I mean, and just a reminder again that the Departments of Sports, Arts and Culture and Recreation have a relief fund open for artists in Gauteng. You can go on www.gautengfilmcommission.org.za to apply. The closing date is on Friday, the 26th of June. And from me to you guys, I think we've come to the end of our session.
Can I add something?
Tomorrow's session. Okay.
I really want to commend you on your professionality throughout these 2 hours. You have it on point. You understand? You are representing. You are so amazing. Your questions are beautiful. They are so structured. You have included everything, and you have involved everybody, and that's amazing. So please keep doing you.
Thank you so much. You guys brought me pressure into me. I mean, if you read about people before you talk to them and you're like, whoa, awards and big films. And thank you so much, you guys, for bringing your brilliance.
It's amazing to know that, you were brave enough to tell your story. It's very relevant. And on top of that, you have received amazing awards. I wish you all the best. Come back with an Oscar, girl. Let's celebrate.
Yes.
And Ora, you did an excellent job. I agree. And I really enjoyed myself. I was a little bit nervous actually. But I really enjoyed myself. It was wonderful to meet you all and to hear your insights.
All right, thank you so much. Your social media handles, personal social media handles quickly.
Okay.
Samang Kuno on Facebook, G_Kuno on Instagram, and Miss_Hoodie on Twitter.
Okay.
For me on Instagram, Bianca_Tusi, and Facebook, we're not friends, sorry. But you can follow. But we can follow each other on Honeybee Films _SA. That's where you can see. Yeah, you can see everything, and we'll follow you back. We will love you because we are all young people trying to make it in these streets. So
yeah, I saw the Honeybee Films account earlier this morning, and I was like, okay. Thank you so much, guys. And I am Oratile Mohoje on all social media platforms. And catch tomorrow's session, I think, is the Film Publication Board, talking all things film classification. Please do come and ask them questions on why certain films are 18 plus and others are not. And that is the end of the session from us to everybody. Bye. See you guys in the industry.
The Gauteng province has created a relief for the benefit of individuals within the sports and arts sector. This is out of the realization that sports and arts continue to be one of the sectors that is hardest hit by the COVID pandemic. And in this regard, as a caring government, we have found means of how we can create some form of relief for individuals within the sectors, but also possible job opportunities. And in this regard, one of the things that we have done with all the national events or national day events that we do have, we've made them virtual and are still able to employ and work with various artists and sports individuals. And this has been done from our Human Rights Day, our Freedom Day, and now with Youth Month. We continue to integrate artists and sports individuals within, so that whilst COVID does not allow for major events to take place, by going virtual, it enables us to still be able to utilize these skills and showcase the talent that the province has. With regard to the Gauteng Relief Fund that is created for individuals within the sports and arts sectors, this is a relief fund of 28 million, which we seek to find individuals who work within our communities. These may be individuals who teach art classes within communities, who coach soccer teams within communities, netball teams and so forth across the various sporting codes. These are the individuals who play a critical role in the development of our communities. These are people who ensure that our communities keep fit and, more importantly, are engaged within positive recreational activities. Our fund is geared at all these people, and all we ask is that you come and apply, visit our website, visit our social media pages at Gauteng SACR, that's at Gauteng SACR, and you'll be able to get more information. We really want to make sure that we assist these individuals because we appreciate the work that they do in our communities, because it is in line with what government seeks to do, and we want to make sure that people continue being engaged within positive activities such as recreation, within arts, within our sports, and so forth. So please do apply. This fund is for you.
Films, games, and publications may contain numerous kinds of content, of which some can offend or be downright unsuitable for certain age groups. This is where we come in. The Film and Publication Board, or FPB for short, exists to help regulate what content you or your child gets exposed to. Along with the help from the public and cooperation from distributors, we set out to ensure that anyone and everyone can make informed decisions when deciding on what to watch, play, or read. Now, please sit back, relax, and allow me to quickly show you how we can achieve these goals and elaborate as to what we actually stand for. First and foremost, concerning our mandate and function, the FPB has 3 objectives. Namely, number 1, to provide consumer advice to enable adults to make informed viewing, reading, and gaming choices, both for themselves and for the children in their care. Number 2, to protect children from exposure to disturbing and harmful materials and from premature exposure to adult experiences. And number 3, to make the use of children in and the exposure of children to pornography punishable. We fulfill our mandate through the classification of films, games, and certain publications, registration of distributors and exhibitors, and the determination of exemption applications. To clarify, classification is the process of assigning age ratings and consumer advice to all films, games, and certain publications that are distributed or exhibited in South Africa. Even though the FPB and its partners do anything and everything in our power to protect children from harmful material, at the end of the day, it is a shared responsibility. Members